Wow, you guys are great. That was awesome. Didn't have to clap my hands or do anything. You've probably been in a lot of meetings, haven't you? I'm Deb Lane, and I'm a water resources analyst with the City of Santa Rosa, and we want to welcome you here today. We are so happy to have you here at our utility field operations building. And I just wanted to do a little quick house cleaning. Restrooms, if you haven't found them yet, are down on the end. Sean's amazing apples are on the front table. And when you come into your work sessions, there is a pencil sharpener up there and a few water use efficiency program pencils you're welcome to take with you. We're so happy to be supporting this effort and have you here today. And I wanted to hand this off now to Brian Lee, who is with Sonoma Water. And he was the project manager, is the project manager with the Sonoma-Marin Saving Water Partnerships project to create these landscape templates. So here's Brian Lee.
Thanks, Deb. Welcome, everybody, and thank you for being here today. A little bit of background about the Sonoma-Marin Saving Water Partnership. So we're a collaborative of 10 water utilities in Sonoma and Marin counties. From the town of Windsor all the way down to Marin Municipal Water District. We were formed in 2010 to maximize the effectiveness of our water conservation programs and to provide a unified message throughout our region when it comes to things like rebate programs, drought messaging, and things like that. So we take a regional and coordinated approach to the programs that we offer. And that's why we're here today with these landscape template plans, because as you know, the fires affected a great area of Sonoma County. So people in the California American Water District area, as well as Valley of the Moon, in addition to Santa Rosa, have use for these templates. So our landscape template goals is to support our community to recover from the fires and also to create plans and specifications that are cost conscious because we all know that your insurance and coverage and things like that are not going to cover everything. We want to make sure that the landscapes comply with WELO, the Water Efficient Landscape Ordinance. We want to encourage Russian River and Bay-friendly sustainable landscaping practices. And we also wanted to provide design options for green infrastructure elements, such as stormwater management, rainwater harvesting, gray water, laundry to landscape, etc. And we also want to increase the number of water-efficient landscapes in Sonoma and Marin counties. So with that, on today's agenda, we have some presentations. We'll have a presentation with Ann Baker, who is the landscape architect who designed the 8 landscape templates. We will also have a presentation from Sean McNeil, who will go over some details on how to modify the plans, and we'll also have a few words from Gabe Osborne from the planning department about the plan checks that are available here today. Outside, there are setting up landscape materials demos, so be sure to check that out during the breaks, and if you're waiting for session 2. And I just wanted to thank our volunteer advisors for being here today. They've taken their time to get trained and be here to help out. So with that, here's Ann Baker.
Thank you, Brian. My name is Ann Baker. I'm with Ann Baker Landscape Architecture in Petaluma. It's my honor to have worked on this project with the Water Agency in collaboration with the City of Santa Rosa. I also had a great team of landscape designers, contractors, mappers, daily actors on the project. And our task was to create permit-ready front yard landscape templates for this community. And this was the Sonoma-Marin Water Saving Partnership project that Brian just mentioned. And there's my team that I worked with on the project. And as Brian mentioned, these were our project goals. One thing I want to add is that all the designs are fire safer. And as Brian mentioned, we were integrating sustainability elements to restore neighborhood vitality and also improve adaptability to climate change. And with reference to that, what we see coming from research with regards to local climate change is warmer conditions in summer and winter, and the North Bay region becoming more arid, meaning our dry season is longer, and rainfall likely to be more variable and flashy, so maybe more intense storms, more flooding, but then also more periods of drought. So when we do sustainable design, we kind of back up and look a bit at the social historical context and the ecological context. So I'll just give you a little brief example of how we do that. We look at the period of neighborhood development, soils, drainage, impervious cover, and the characteristics of the existing urban forest. And we want going forward that our landscapes kind of improve on these statistics. So here's a graphic of Coffee Park, and the blue is houses, and that's impermeable surfaces. Red is road, and buff is other paved surfaces. So overall, Coffee Park was roughly 60% impervious, meaning that rain couldn't penetrate into the soil water bank. Is everything okay? Yes. Ah, okay, thank you. Oh, brilliant. Thank you. And this was the percent urban cover in, tree cover in Coffee Park prior to the fire. So for the templates themselves, we used a fire safer planting guideline, and the key point is that within 5 feet of the house, you want plantings to be under 3 feet tall and low fuel. So that's a little opposite from the kind of foundation shrubs, which are more typical in previous landscape designs. And you have a clean and green landscape palette throughout your site. You're looking at defensible spaces front and back, and pulling trees a little bit away from the structure so you can not have them overhang your roofs, reducing the connectivity of fuels, and thinking through fire weather in this community. There are more stringent wildland-urban interface guidelines, or WUI, for the colored areas here, and then the bright red is the local Santa Rosa responsibility area for high fire. The sustainable design elements that we looked at in particular were permeable paving, disconnecting downspouts and paving, so we didn't have downspouts running directly out into the street, into the storm drain system. And we used rain gardens and swales in order to bring the water down into the earth and bank it into the soil. We introduced two types of gray water systems that could be adapted into your properties, and have a rainwater harvesting sample detail, and we have shade trees and habitat plantings. So this is the general approach to treating water on your site. You try and slow it, spread it, sink it, and bank it in the earth. And I should say this slideshow is available in a PDF, so you don't have to take notes. I'm just going to kind of zoom through everything and try and let you know how we arrived at the designs and kind of the important components for you to consider for your own yards. So here's some example of permeable paving. It's a aggregate paving system. If I can get this to work. Here with a kind of a plastic cell underneath, but you just see the gravel on top. And then this is a different type of permeable paving with small concrete cells that are filled with gravel. And here's a unit paver driveway, and then in the back, it has just a gravel area. So you can use different types of permeable paving on your site. Here's some examples of rain gardens with a bioretention area on the right in between strips of paving. A dry garden, swale, more of a wet garden looking swale. These are all different ways you can bank more water in your soil so your plants and your landscape, you don't need to turn your irrigation on as soon in the season. This is a more urban solution. This is from Portland. And the planter on here is actually a stormwater planter. And the downspout goes directly into it, so that's more for multifamily housing type solutions. And here's a street side stormwater planter where water is being harvested off the street and infiltrated in the planter there. Here's a sample of the simple laundry to landscape gray water system. It's a diagram from the Santa Clara Valley Water District. And I have the system at my home. It's awesome. It waters all my my fruit trees. It's very simple to operate and just comes right out of your laundry. Here's an example of a slimline rainwater tank. These are from Australia. They're doing really nice, kind of handsome looking, more urbane tanks. So you can start to put them in your front yard, not just your backyard, and have them be more of a feature. We also proposed in the templates alternative fencing. We wanted people to think about using less wood fencing and the wood fencing being kind of a fuel connectivity issue for people in fire zones. So thinking about trellis fencing and metal fencing and reducing the connectivity of wood fencing to your house. The specific landscape permit requirements that the templates need to meet are, the main one is that the front yard needs to be less than 2,500 square feet. Every yard needs to have smart irrigation controllers with a weather sensor, so they're turned off if it rains, and 75% low water use plants. All the templates have drip irrigation systems, which are easy to expand and contract, so they're easier to work with, and owners self-certify and simplify the inspection. There's some examples of the plants that we're using. And fire safer planting, you would separate the shrubs as the arrow showing there. That's the master plant list. We have 2 for low and medium water. And here are the 8 styles of the gardens that we created that are on the Sonoma-Marin Watershed, the partnership website, and you can select the concept plan, the design template, and the cost opinion. Here's some examples of the plans themselves. This is the contemporary with clean lines. Here's a native adaptive, more curving lines. There's a pollinator garden and a bird habitat garden. All of the designs have rain gardens on them. This is eco-edible. There's the rain garden there and another one there. This is the cottage style, which is more swaths of color and more traditional design. We vetted all these concepts into community meetings. So here's the first one, and we're doing a presentation and getting people's feedback and sitting around the table, getting their feedback on the specific designs. We had people put dots on things that they liked in green and blue, things that they liked but they found difficult to implement and they wanted support implementing. So that's all the feedback we got. So I'm going to just dive a little bit into the Sonoma Cottage template. So here's the front yard of the Sonoma Cottage. It has a alternative lawn area here, a rain garden up here. This is the only one with a retaining wall and some stairs. Has another optional rain garden in this corner and a tree up here. So the template design looks like this. The main features are the color coordination of the orange is the medium water use, green is low, purple in this one is low. You have a summary water table here, your plant and material list here, and it's always important to see where the north arrow is because that's going to affect the amount of sun on your site. The templates are flipped, so if your driveway happens to be on the other side, you can use a flipped version. And then the second drawing is the irrigation drawing. So this one also has the same summary water use table, and that's the main thing that you need to fill out on both these pages. And you would adjust, Sean will go into this in more detail, but the outline of the hydrozones, the low water use and the moderate water use are adjusted to fit your site, and it shows how you use the drip irrigation for the trees. And there's a whole list of drip irrigation components that are specified for you, but you can also use or equal. So there's I'm going to zoom through this because it's kind of not that exciting, but it's all the details that we've provided for you that are meant to save you money and help ensure that you get a quality installation from your contractor. So you'll have details for irrigation, you have details for planting, you have details for paving and for rain gardens, how to build all this stuff. So even if you find that the template doesn't fit your site perfectly, you can still use all of these details and we'll save you time and money and help you ensure you get a good quality installation. So these are planting details. There's a whole sheet of rain garden details, and I'll just dive into them. There's a packet, I think, on everybody's table. This is kind of an option for doing overland flow. So you could do a splash block to a rain garden. It'll flow through a permeable path, or you could take your downspout into a pipe and have it pop out in a rain garden with an atrium bubbler, and then take it again into another atrium bubbler, down into another rain garden. There's stabilized aggregate details. There's a drainage sleeve through any type of paving that's specified, so that's something you can just buy off the shelf and put in your site where you need it. There's how to build the swale on the slope, and paving details for your driveway, like this gravel paved one, which was the first aggregate paving I showed for the driveway. And if you already have a concrete driveway, but you want to harvest some water off it, you can use this trench drain detail to take kind of the top half of your driveway and put it in a trench drain and take it over into your landscape. So there's a lot of details here for you to use. There's the rainwater harvesting one, the gray water, and the branch drain gray water. And those are all the templates that you can choose from. And that's pretty much my presentation. We're going to look at this workshop schedule, but now I'm going to introduce Sean McNeil. He's going to come up and tell you more detail how to adapt the templates to your site. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ann. Okay, if I could have all the advisors go meet by the vending machines. So if you're, Ann, you can stay here though. But all the other advisors go meet by the vending machines. That would be great. I want to thank Ann for that presentation. So I'm Sean McNeil, and I'm with the City of Santa Rosa. I work in our water efficiency program for the water department. I'm really overwhelmed with the audience size today. I'm really happy that all of you took the time on Saturday to come out and hear this talk, and we're really happy to be here to help support you in this transition as you're trying to get your landscapes and your houses back in order. So thank you so much for coming. So today I'm just going to kind of go over a few things. What I want you to know is we're going to try to, I'm going to walk around a little. I don't want you guys to feel like you're left out. So I have a microphone so you guys could still hear me, but I want to make sure. Oops. We're going to modify, talk about how to modify the template drawings for your shape and lot size, how to expand or shrink the plans, and how to adjust the plants. And then I'll go briefly into the deferral option for those of you who are in the City of Santa Rosa. It's a specific option that we're providing people who want to be able to move right into their home. So I'll talk about that towards the end. So the first thing you want to do when deciding to use the template plans is you want to pick the plan that best fits your aesthetic. Try to avoid just picking the plan that looks the most like your yard. It seems like that would make the most sense, but it's not, because you want to use the design that is what you want your landscape to look like. If you start there, then you're going to start with the best design, and then we're going to try to help you how to adapt that design to fit into your landscape shape. We will be having renderings coming soon. I know for those of you who are going to be working on your plans today, you'll have already chosen which design you want, but we'll have renderings, and these will be 3D or two-dimensional pictures of what the landscapes fully installed will look like. So when we use the templates, first thing you need to do is you need to print out full-size sheets of sheet L1 and L2. That's 24 inch by 36. L1 is the planting plan, and L2 is the irrigation plan. Then, if you want, you can print out the other full-size sheets as well, but we've also recently just made available on the Saving Water Partnership website the 8.5 11 by 11 details, and you'll find those on and you can print those out. And so those you'll need, and you'll draw in any difference in the lot shape and add and subtract features to complete the design. So to expand the plans, this is the most critical step. If you're going to expand, shrink, change, to use this pathway for compliance with the Water Efficient Landscape Ordinance, the state requirements, you have to have 75% of the planted areas, 75% have to be low water use, and 25% could be moderate. So any changes we make, we need to come back and make sure that we're keeping that in check. And the plans, as they are designed, all meet that criteria. So we just want to make sure any changes we're making, we do that. So what we'll do to make sure that, we'll calculate the landscaped areas for each zone, each area, and fill that in. And the plan sheets, the full-size plan sheets, have the tables where you put the data, and it's real simple to just kind of follow through. It's almost like a 1040 EZ form. Almost. And make sure, and another thing that these plans do is if you follow the plans, they make sure that you're not going to exceed the capacity of the irrigation system through your design. And we have that all in there, and if you just follow the steps and any changes you make, you'll have a real simple way to build your landscape irrigation that won't fail. So when we modify for shape and lot size, here's an example. I'm just going to try to walk around a little bit here to make sure everybody gets this. What I've done here is I've changed the lot shape. I used a red pen just so that it stands out more in the screens. I changed the lot shape. See, so I have more of a pie wedge shape over there. See that pie wedge shape? And I removed a bunch of plants because they're no longer on my property. That makes sense, right? I had to remove those plants, so I just X'd them out right there. I have a tree right here. Well, it's on the border of my property. I just moved it over, and I just drew that I moved it over. So I just drew that in right there. See my round circle there with the dot? That's my tree. I moved it over. I just showed that. That'll stay there. This pathway that was drawn here, I took that out. It wasn't going to work for me. So I took the pathway out, and I just X'd it out right there, made that really clear. So that's a very clear example of what my intention is doing. And that's how you can modify the plan. So you can turn in something with that kind of a markup that shows that those changes to that template drawing, and it shows what I'm going to do. Over in this area over here, you can see I've added plants. There were some of the plants in the design that I liked, and so I just added a couple more of them in the area that was there, and I X'd out the plants that were in the real simple way of doing that. And we'll come back to that example again when we look at the irrigation plan. I'll use that exact same example. So if you do change plants, I don't necessarily suggest you change plants, but if you do want to change the plants, it's really important that if there's low water use plants, you swap them for low water use plants, other low water use plants. And it's critical that you get similar types, so you don't want to swap a ground cover for a tree. It wouldn't really fit within the design. So you want to have a similar type plant to go in if you do any swapping. Things that can change, maybe your garden, when you readjust for the north arrow, the plan you chose is more full sun. You want to have something very similar that has more shade in it, then you could use the plant list for that. That's a great one. Or of course, if you like a different color, you can change it for that. And then ultimately, when you go to build these, if the plants aren't available, the exact species, and there's a similar one there, in your as-built, you'll write those in. But making sure that we are using the same water use factor for these plants. And once again, because it's most critical, I'm going to repeat it. Plantings must be 75% of the area when we're done, of the landscaped area. Must be low water use. So Anne talked briefly about the plant lists. These plant lists that her team put together are incredibly powerful plant lists. There's a low water use plant list, and there's a high water use plant list, and they're broken out into tree, shrub, grasses, etc. They also tell you exposure, what type of sunlight the plants need, and they show color and size at maturity. These are all really important factors when you're trying to figure out which plants to substitute in. And there's much more on the list. So when we adjust the plantings for different lot size, just kind of a rule of thumb, if your lot is 25% larger, right, or smaller, you're going to decrease the overall plantings by 25%. If it's about 10% larger, you'll increase your plantings by about 10%. But I also want to speak for those of you in the city of Santa Rosa. There has been concern that some of these plantings might be a little too expensive, and ways that people could cut back on costs would be to reduce the percentage, the overall percentage of plants in the landscape. So you just take up to a 50% reduction in the number of plants that you install, but you're going to do that not by just broad number, but overall density of plants. So you can't take out all the big plants and leave little ones. This is a little more challenging in the maintenance end. It may be savings at the installation phase, but eventually all those open spaces will be places that you'll have to weed. Whereas if you plant the planting densities that are in the plans, they will self-fill in, and you won't have to worry about weeding as much later on as they mature. So though this is allowed, I would still suggest to use the full density. And the savings is, if you're doing this yourself, the savings isn't that great overall with cost of things for the number of plants, and especially if you have a small yard. So something to think about. Just remind you of this change that we made before I move into the irrigation plan. Oh no, the trees plant list. So on the planting plan, I told you I wanted to make some minor changes. This might be hard for you to see where you are, but I had up here, this is an island oak, and I changed it for a valley oak, and that's just me because I love the valley oak. I changed it out for a valley oak. And so all I did is I just wrote the name in and put it there. Also, because I had some plants that were in the plan that when I redrew my plot line, they were not even in the plan anymore. So I just scratched them out completely right there. Just a red line right through it. You see that over there? Just a red line right through it. And then others, I just changed the number because I had a smaller area where those plants were kept, so I reduced the number. Now I'm going to adjust the irrigation plans. So getting back to this example, this is the planting plan adjustment. Now I want to take a look at the irrigation plans, and here's that path. And what I've done is in that path area, I've put these the same symbol as this meadow area. So that tells you that that's going to be, I'm planning to continue the meadow into that area instead of having the path, because I wanted to just maybe have some stepping stones, not a full path, but some stepping stones to the backyard. And so I like the meadow look, and walking through a meadow sounds nice to get to the backyard. So that's how I wanted to do that. Also, I want to point out that I have these sleeves here. Originally, the sleeves were over here out of the property, and sleeves are pipes that are under hardscape that allow me to fish other pipes through them. So I can put my irrigation underneath hardscape. So when you don't have the hardscape in, that's the right time to put sleeves in. So I have sleeves there, I have a sleeve through the pathway here, and I have a sleeve through the driveway. Yeah, usually it's a larger size PVC pipe, 2 to 4 inch, depending on how many pipes you have to fit through there. And at any time you need to get a pipe through hardscape, or if a pipe breaks at some point, it's a lot easier to make changes if you have them in a sleeve versus just direct burying them under hardscape. All right, and then, well, it's dark in the middle one here, but it's much better over here. Sorry about that. So here I just took and I colored those areas in. So the green area is my low water use planting area, and the blue areas are where my 2 trees are located on my plan. And so this is what you would do on your irrigation plan. And what this is showing you is that my intention is I'm going to irrigate all those areas. The other thing I've drawn in, whoops. The other thing I've drawn in are these, I moved the controller. So the controller was right over here. I moved it into the garage. I'll show you guys that. So controller, there's it in the garage, but I had to create a wire path. I need to get the wires from the controller to where my irrigation valves are located over here. And so I put that right where in the same trench where I'm going to have my pipes going. So they're going to go through the same sleeve or right underneath this path back to there. So I've drawn that in because you don't want to move your controller over there and figure, how am I going to get the wires over there now after everything's put in? So I put that in there. And then I've also moved my pipes, and I show, for detail, I'll show you in a minute. So now we need to calculate the landscaped area. So there's two different ways that we can calculate landscaped area. Some of you might already know how many square feet your front area is. And then you can use this formula. So if you already know, then what you would do is take that total landscaped area, and then you're going to add to it the tree canopy. And so for simplicity of this workshop in the future, what we're going to just do is bin all the trees into a small tree. You're going to add 50 square feet. A medium tree, you'll add 75 square feet, and a large tree, you'll add 100 square feet. And once again, we'll need to make sure that our percentage of low water use plantings in this area are still 75%. So we take all the pathways, all the hardscape and special landscaped areas, we subtract that from the total landscaped area, and that gives us our total front yard area, and that gives us our landscape. So let's just walk through how those calculations would look. So my front area in the example that I've drawn is 1,550 square feet. I have one large size medium water use tree, so I add 100 square feet for that. I have one medium-sized medium water use tree at 75 square feet. And when I measure up the path and front porch, I get 335 square feet. And then when I measure and I look at the other area, that doesn't include the trees. I have 1,215 square feet of low water use plantings. So there's the calculation of my total landscaped area. You can see the total front yard right there, 1,550. I've added the 2 trees, and I've subtracted the hardscape and the unplanted area to get a total of 1,390. This is important because you're going to put this in the plans, and this is what you're going to use to calculate how much percentage of low water use plants you have. So this is why I'm going over this. My low water use landscapes, 1,215 square feet. So the percent low water use is just basically this division problem times 100. I didn't put that in because I wanted it to be, I get 87%. Medium water use trees is 175 square feet, and that's 13%. So I've met the requirements in my changes. This is a good looking plan. Here's another way to do it. For those of you who don't know how much square feet you have in the front, you can start looking at your landscaped areas, and that's what I've done is I've drawn out the landscaped areas just in shape form like that. And then because I like geometry, I broke them out into shapes that I can now measure. So I know how to figure out the area of a square, a rectangle, and a triangle pretty quickly. So I've done that here. And here's the calculations for that. I won't walk you through it all. You have this handout. If you want to double check my math, you're welcome to. But I end up with the same number and the same percentages doing it that way. So 2 ways to calculate that. Then I go to my plant water table. Now I enter this right into the plan sheet. So the low water use, 1,215. Medium is 175. 1,390 total, have my percentages there, just like it shows you in the example of the template. Okay, so on the template sheets, this is already there. I've just filled it in for that. The other thing I need to do, can we hold questions to the end? We'll have a little bit of questions with all 3 of us up. So what I've done also is I've stubbed out for each area where I'm going to need to transition from the hard pipe to my drip tubing, right? Because I don't want drip tubing going underneath the hardscape. I want hard pipe there. So it comes down here. I stub out right there. This is what I told you I was going to show you. So I stubbed out in these 5 different areas. This is important because I need to know each time we stub out, we don't want to have a run of too long of tubing, because you start to lose pressure in it. So we just have some real simple formulas in the plan set, how many square feet you can have before you have to stub out. So I stub out here, I stub out over here, and I stub out here, here, and here. So on my low water use planting area, I have 5 different stub outs where I'm going to transition from PVC pipe to the drip tubing, okay? And there's a part in their plans where you write that in. Those are the subzones. That goes right there. So now I've filled out my irrigation valve table here. So the low water use plantings, I have 5 subzones. It's clay loam. It's 1,215 feet. And look at this right here, what I've just circled. It says that each one of those subzones can't exceed 1,100 square feet. So I'm pretty much, with 5 sections, I'm not even close to getting to the maximum capacity of this system. So that's how you modify the plans. Now let's talk about getting those plans ready for approval. So we have an application packet. You could either use the front page if you print out the entire plan set of the template drawings and modify those, then the application part is all in the front sheet. But what we've also done for your convenience, if you just wanted to print the 8.5 by 11 version, this is up on the website, and you can get the application packet, which includes all the information on the front sheet and all the required details associated with the plans for any minimum installation. That's one piece. So you'd have your full-size planting and irrigation plan sheets, as I talked about earlier, in this application. In the application, there's 6 steps to complete. 4 of those steps are for before you do, and the last 2 steps are after you've done and ready for the inspector to come. So we have the required details. There's a minimum submission, and then all the details that Ann was talking about and more are also available as sort of menu items that you can just add into your plans. If you have those optional elements in your final landscape plans, you want to print out the details that you need. So in the application, we have these 4 steps, and they're basically project information, right? You need to put where the project is located, the address, who's the applicant, so that the planning department can contact you. There's a pre-construction agreement that's saying that you're going to install the landscape as these plans are. You're going to sign that, or the applicant will. Step 3 is to provide the plans. You're going to certify that you're providing that. And step 4 is a disclaimer. Because we're modifying these plans, the landscape architect, and we're giving these to you to use, you're basically indemnifying us that if for something happens in this installation, you'll go ahead and not sue us. So that's the disclaimer. It's on you once you change them. And then you want to keep a copy of everything that you submit. And if you'll be finishing up your plans for review today, Gabe and his team will be in this room reviewing your plans for those of you in the city of Santa Rosa who are ready to go. They'll be able to take photos of your plan sheets, so you could take your plan sheets, but we'll have to figure out how we're going to deal with the application sheets. So here are all the required detail sheets. I just not going to speak to all these detail sheets, but they're in the presentation that you got when you came in today, and this presentation also will be made available online. And it'll have hyperlinks in it as well, so that you can click on the hyperlinks to get to the landscape plans and the other resources that we're trying to promote. So when you add these optional detail sheets, and I do want to just give a plug for some of these options that are in there. What's really nice about these features is it's a really holistic way of rebuilding your gardens and your landscaped areas into something that's more in tune with the natural environment. Taking the rainwater that falls from the sky and hits your roof and your pavement and putting it into your landscape is just better for you in the long run. It's better for your landscape, and it's better for water quality in the area. So you're basically getting that water, instead of treating it as a pollutant, you're treating it as a resource. So you won't have to buy water that's pumped, that's treated, pumped, and delivered to your house to supplement as much water during the irrigation season. So as Ann had mentioned, if you have these features, you're turning your irrigation system on much later in the season. You're also deep watering the soil, keeping soil moisture high, and we know that's definitely a fire wiser way to be. I do want to really stress that while it may seem like take out anything that's complicated, they're very simple. They're very easy to install. They're places where water can go. It's just like a hole. Water can go when it rains. And you have to do something with the rainwater anyway. We have some resources to help you install these. So in addition to the free details and plans that are provided by Ann Baker Landscapes, we'll have some workshops coming up on October 4th with daily acts, and we'll be talking about rainwater specifically. On October 18th will be gray water. And then if you're in the city of Santa Rosa, you're eligible for rebates if you install a rainwater harvesting system of up to 25 cents per 1,000 gallons. Per gallon, 25 cents per gallon. And there are some program details we'll talk about more specifically with anybody who's interested. Also, we do provide gray water rebates of $75 per fixture that you convert. So the landscape deferral option, I just have a couple of minutes to just get into this. If you're choosing this option, you're in the city of Santa Rosa, you can defer your landscape implementation, planting, and installation until 2 years after you get occupancy. But you will still need to submit your landscape plans. You'll need to install the necessary sleeves. You need to make sure that you'll be able to run the sleeves underneath the parking areas and hardscape in your landscape. And you'll also need to do all the soil amendment and top dress with mulch to prevent weeds from taking over and plant those trees. That's what would be required prior to occupancy. So to get your plans approved, bring your landscape plans. If you're not doing it today, you'll bring your landscape plans to the Rebuild Center and include with your submission all the items that I've talked about today. And with that, what I'd like to do before we go to questions, I'd like to invite Gabe Osborne up from Planning and Economic Development to talk a little bit about what they're seeing.
Good morning, everybody. Gabe Osborne. I'm the Deputy Director of Development Services for the City of Santa Rosa. A lot of familiar faces in the crowd. I always say that. I'll keep it short. You probably heard me ramble on up here many times in community meetings. So I'll talk a little bit about how this fits into the overall building process, because that's the big thing, right, is we're trying to get you back home. And this is a bit of a unique element because it's one of the aspects of the building process that you can actually do on your own. You can't do structural calculations for the foundation on your own, but this gets you into something where you don't necessarily need a licensed professional to take it to completion. So I always like to take a little poll on the mixed room. So how many people are in the city limits and how many people are in the county? So city limits first. Okay, so that's the vast majority. And of those people in the city limits, how many people are actually going through the building process now? And what I mean by that is how many people have a defined plan where the site plan is settled, so you might just be working on some pieces, or has submitted the plan to the city. That's a good number as well. And out of that group, how many people would be prepared to complete their landscape design today and get it completed? A much smaller group. So basically what we are going to do is we do have resources here today for those few, and maybe it's more than that. Maybe we basically can find that some people out of this exercise of sitting down with folks and getting some assistance get it to completion. We have the ability to completely digitize your set. So that is even the application package, Sean. I figured that out at 11 last night because that's what I do on a Friday night. So we can get you logged into the permit system. We can check the box. Don't worry if you want to change it. So this is one thing that hopefully we can get it off your mind. We can complete it. You can always come into the permit center and change it later. So if you take that completed plan home and you decide a month from now that you want to do something different, we have the ability to modify that really quick. For those of you that aren't ready to go that direction, don't worry. We're looking at providing resources. It's difficult to commit, but as more people come through the building process and more people are interested in doing this on their own, we're trying to figure out how we can support them. And there's a few different ways. So we can do it in events such as this, which basically would allow you to take care of the whole process in 2 hours, or we can set up consultation services at our permit center. So we're looking at doing that as well. We're likely going to hire somebody for a period of time that specifically deals with the landscaping aspect. So that's consultation, that's review, approval, inspection. So it takes care of that full boat. So just really briefly, we have a document that's over at the front counter. I think we did not bring enough copies, but we can reproduce them, that explains the overall process from a permitting standpoint. So how does it fit in? It expands a little bit on the deferral option. It lets you know when you need to get this done. So basically, as you go through the building permit process, the landscape plan is required to be submitted prior to sheetrock inspection. Now, if you get in a bind and you're ready for your sheetrock inspection, am I going to hold it? No, of course not. We're going to work with you to get it through. The landscaping, if you don't do the deferral option, is done prior to occupancy. Now, once again, if you get into a bind and you can't get it done, am I going to hold your keys? No. We're going to have these one-off situations that we've seen left and right through the rebuild. The whole desire is to get you back home. So the deferral option was put in place for the individuals that are concerned about getting a landscape contractor because they're going to be impacted with the rebuild. Completely understood. That's why we put that in place. I've had people too say, I just want to do this myself because it's what I like doing. Perfectly good option. So that's why we have that deferral program in place. So keep in mind, this is just really the first step in working people through it. There are going to be more resources, and we'll be there if there's any questions. So most of what we've developed is based on community input. When we rolled out this landscape requirement, we were listening to what people said, and we rolled that into a policy. So just please keep in mind that that'll be the case moving forward. So that's my spiel. We'll get you into the useful aspect of sitting down. Like I said, we'll be in the back of the room if you're ready to go. So at this point, we actually can open it up to any questions you might have before we roll into the next phase. You want to moderate?
We don't have a lot of time for questions, and I'm the timekeeper. But we're going to answer them.
So can you get the mic?
I will run the mic.
I had a question about the street trees. The city's been providing street trees for the perimeters at the curb.
Yeah, so there's been a big discussion about the street trees. So what typically the street trees are referred to as planter strip trees. So that's that strip behind the sidewalk and in between the curb. Most of those were damaged as part of the fire. The city is in the process of getting an arborist on contract to remove those, the ones that are clearly fire damaged. So they'll analyze the tree. If the tree is damaged, it will be removed. As part of that process, there's been a big discussion, well, if you remove it, then can we put one back in? So the planter strip trees are the property owner's responsibility. There was periods of time where the city maintained those planter strips. In the downturn in the economy, a lot of that the city had to step away from because of the cost. What we've been looking for are creative options to actually put trees back in. Now the challenge with that is it is not FEMA reimbursable because the replacement of the tree, FEMA typically doesn't want to kick money out for that. The removal of the tree is a bit of a different animal, so that's why they're marching forward with that process. But there's a lot of discussions currently happening, and unfortunately nothing that has settled to where the city can actually commit to it. So as it stands now, we're deferring that the property owner install anything in the planter strip. You can elect to do that or not, and let this thing play out. So it may be that there's some assistance in getting the trees, it may not.
Let's move on to a different question.
Is the city providing trees?
The city,
They used to provide trees.
Yeah, there was that period of time where the city did maintain the planter strip. That was many years ago. The city does not now. So providing the trees would be, we have to get FEMA reimbursement. So there has to be a funding source for that. So typically FEMA is the city's insurance policy for a lot of those items. And as it stands right now, it looks like that's not going to happen.
Another question over here.
From a prior workshop, I had heard, and it was my understanding, that if you planted edibles, that those came out of the calculation. So if you're planting a tree that might be, I mean, let's say a peach tree is a medium water usage tree, is that coming out of the calculation?
Okay, so that's a special landscaped area. And so if you separately valve those so that they have their own irrigation valve that goes to the fruit, you take those out of your overall landscape calculations. So that is part of the formula that we have. That's considered a special landscaped area. And anything like veggie boxes and things like that, but you probably wouldn't want your trees and veggie boxes on the same irrigation valve. You definitely don't.
They can't be. Right.
But you might want to look at that, and if they're low water use edibles, you might not want to take them out because you still need 75% low water use. So that means
And we're going to get into all those technical questions in the work sessions because I'm watching time. We have time for one more general question.
There was a woman who had a question in the back.
Okay, one more general
Then-
question here.
Your plans focus a lot on the front. Is this also working on the backyard?
The concept plans that we did, we designed the whole yard because we wanted to offer a vision for the whole yard and the connectivity and different uses that you had, things that made sense to go in the front and made sense to go in the back. But the permit is just for the front yard. So when we went to the templates, which are the construction-ready plans, we just looked at the front yard. But the concept plans give you a lot of information about what your backyard could be like. So feel free to use that.
Last question I heard was, we've heard a lot about the city of Santa Rosa, but what about the county?
Yay for me.
How many people here are in the county?
So that's actually a good number. So there's a distinct difference between the city and the county. So as you know, in the city, it's a bit of a different type of development. When you get in the county, it's a mixed bag. You have things that look very similar to the city with Larkfield, and then you have the Mark West Springs area, which looks totally dissimilar. Larger lots, not public water. So the county isn't actually a water provider. They work with the Sonoma County Agency or other districts to provide water. A lot of people are on wells. So it's a little bit of a different animal from a water conservation standpoint. And from a requirement standpoint. So in the city of Santa Rosa, the zoning code actually requires landscaping to go in as part of the development of a single-family home. And that's why you see with all new subdivisions, front yard landscaping goes in. So it's referred to as the front yard setback, and that's the only requirement that you actually have as part of the rebuild. And that's why everything focuses on the front yard, because that's really your minimum requirement. The county doesn't really have that same requirement. So on the county side, it's optional. So what happens is if you elect to install landscaping as part of the rebuild process, then the Water Efficient Ordinance comes into play, which makes these drawings more useful because they're the ability for you to do it yourself, still meet the ordinance, and then you can march it through the building permit process. But the county can issue a permit because they don't have that requirement without the landscaping, so it's optional. So it's a little different. So some people have the option there of not doing it. And it was the challenge on our end because what we ran into very early on in the process when we said, hey, do people want landscaping in their neighborhood? It was yes. And then it got into we started uncovering the process and it was like, no. And we kind of started working through that a little bit. So this was really that exercise to find that, okay, we want it, how do we make it a little easier, where the county basically had an easier way to say, no, it's just an elective. So if people do it, they have to go through this process. But if they don't, they have this other option that can clearly get them through the building side. So for the folks in the county, it's more or less a resource, and it will be reviewed from what I'm hearing if you elect to do it as part of the building permit process and you submit landscape drawings as part of that building permit package.
One last clarification, and then I think we've got to move on. Sorry, we're not going to have time to do these work sessions, which are important. There was a clarification on when the landscape plans must be submitted for the city of Santa Rosa.
So we actually have a document in the corner, and we've published some documents before on our rebuild site. So that's srcity.org/rebuild. So if you don't get a hard copy there, there's a digital copy at the bottom that lists the landscape requirements. So what we said is that you have to submit that. It's referred to as a deferred submittal, which means you don't have to submit it with your initial building permit package. Anytime something's deferred, you usually have another timeline for it. So what we said is that you have to submit them prior to your sheetrock inspection. And that's about the middle of the building permit process. We wanted to go to final, so that's when you're ready to occupy. The problem with that is a lot of things stack up in final, and you don't want to delay that. That's the point where somebody's ready to hand you the keys. So what we wanted to do is kick it down the road to let this materialize and let us roll out some resources for people to figure this out, and get it about the middle of your building permit process. Is there flexibility in that? Yes. Like I said, I'm not going to hold the building permit inspection, but when you get to that, there's also going to be a reminder that, hey, we need to get to the finish line on this landscape drawing. So it is your sheetrock inspection. That's how it's published in the documentation.
All right, and Gabe and his team are going to be here, and if you have additional questions.